I'm Cindy Schisler. I teach over at Wright State University. I have my own part-time consulting business, and it's been fun being here trying to figure out the COVID thing and how we're going to do the classes, but it's been working. Mm-hmm. It's been working. When it comes to leadership, it's everybody's business. Everybody is a leader in some capacity. I don't care whether if you have a title that says I'm a supervisor, I'm a director, I'm a CEO, or you're working with your team. Everybody has responsibilities for some leadership. And so we're going to talk about leadership. There's tons of books out about it. There really are. There's a lot of books. I've seen it over the past, 30 years of my career, really make transitions from how we looked at it and what we called it and what we did with it until today. And really this training today, there is a book I will mention to you. There's two, one I brought with me that have probably impacted me a lot in my leadership philosophy, how I look at it. But really this is kind of a compilation for a Reader's Digest version of 30 years of really what I personally have narrowed down to what I think are some of the important keys that leaders have. The successful organizations that we've consulted with. Wright State had a center for professional development. That's where I spent the majority of my career. We worked with outside companies. This is how I first became acquainted with Miami Valley Communications Council. And we did a lot of supervisor development. We did a lot of leadership development. And I spent time and hours in organizations getting to know the people. So I keep thinking, how could I put this together? What I think are some of the key components. One of the things that leadership used to be, we talked about, and this is still a truism. What is the difference between a leader and a manager? What's the difference? There's got to be a difference between those two people. And there are. Any thoughts from you? What's the difference between being a leader and being a manager?
I think if you're a manager, you have the authority to lead people. They have to follow you because you're your manager. But if you're a leader, people follow you because they want to.
Okay. Yes. People follow you because you want to. That's key. And also, too, there's I would say years back, there might have been a bigger difference between the two. Leaders went out, I think of Dr. Hopkins, who was one of our past presidents here, and truly was a leader in the sense that he went out, he met with the community, he was a visionary, he's the one that pulled things together, and he had directors and he had supervisors on campus who kind of pulled the day-to-day stuff together, did the schedules, hired the people, did all that, okay? Now it's kind of merged, Leaders are working. I mean, not that you weren't working before, but you're scheduling and you're doing all these types of things and you're making sure solving the problems. And you don't have the luxury of just going out and say, let's see what vision I can, fulfill today. Part of your job, but it's not all it is anymore. So leadership has definitely changed. I guess from my career, leadership is a relationship. It really is. And before you can develop relationships, you have to develop some level of rapport. You got to get to know people. There's got to be some rapport. You're probably not going to follow, as Starr said, you're not going to follow someone if there isn't some kind of rapport built and you feel the person is credible and you feel you can trust them. This has all got to be there. It's everyone's business, like I already said. Somebody might say, well, I'm not in a leadership position. Teaching a leadership class on campus a couple years ago, we were into small groups. And one of the girls said, I just don't know if I'm in the right class. She had to have it for a major. She goes, I'm a mom with 4 kids. I'm just working on my degree. I don't have any leadership or team experience. And I said, oh, honey, you got tons of it. You got 4 kids. You're working. You're managing a household. That's leadership. That is leadership. So all of us have the opportunity for leadership, okay? Leadership development is self-development. Probably one of my big philosophies on being a leader is you cannot lead somebody else until you understand and know yourself. You can't. How can you lead me if you got no clue who you are? Okay? How can I lead Star if I got no clue what my goals are, my values. All right. So this is another big one for me. Here's the other one. Credibility is the foundation of leadership, and relationships build your credibility. All right. Credibility is probably the number one biggest characteristics I believe that a leader needs to have. You need to walk the talk. You need to do what you say you're going to do. All right. Leadership is not a place. It's not a position. It's a process. Think about it. And people may come to mind as I talk about this. You can be the CEO of a company. You can be a leader in a department title. You can have a title of a director. You can have a title of whatever. But don't you know people who have those titles who are not leaders? But just because the title's there doesn't mean you have the skill sets. It's a process. It's a process of learning about yourself. It's a process of learning about other people. And there's always the question, are leaders born or are they made? All right. I think some people are born with some of this natural ability to lead, but I also believe that leaders are made. These are skill sets that people can learn. Now, some people are never meant to be. You may have worked in a department, worked with somebody who really wants to be in a supervisor's position, and you just know they're just not cut out for it, but they can still find some area in which to lead. All right, so you don't have to be in that position of prestige. You don't have to be in a position of power, all right, to be a good leader. You just have to matter, and anyone can make a difference in other people's lives. This is what a leader needs to do. We need to make a difference in other people's lives. And how are we going to do it? So success in leadership, business, and life is a function of how we work and play together. Play is also key for me, okay? And so this is kind of where I'm going to set up the whole idea of leadership and where we're going with this. So first activity I'm going to give you, I'm just going to give you maybe 5 minutes, and you can talk together on this. And you may not use your phones to look up these answers. So on page 3, it's just some trivia. I just want you to jot down the 3 wealthiest people in the world and the last 3 people who were selected as Time Magazine's Person of the Year, last 3 people who won the Nobel Peace Prize. These are big deals, you guys. So you can talk with each other. I'll let you work as a team. And just for time's sake, I want you to take the next page, and I want you to just do this on your own. Just the top one said list 3 teachers or coaches who aided you through your journey in high school. Just list one. Kind of go through. Name a friend who's helped you through a difficult time. Name 3 people who taught you something. People who made you feel appreciated. Just jot a name down. Do you have a friend who helped you through a tough time? Someone you're close to. Yeah, you're all nodding on this. Someone who's taught you something that was worthwhile. You've learned. It could be a mentor or a friend. Someone who makes you feel special. Someone who makes you feel appreciated for what you do. Yeah. We had discussions. We laughed about the first page. But why was it easier on the second page?
I think because they're close to us. We know them.
Right.
We have that rapport with those people.
Right. Close to you. They have rapport with them. It's someone you have built a relationship with. All right. It's someone you trust. So we can do great things in life. We can get Nobel Peace Prizes. We can earn billions of dollars. And at the end of the day, a year, 2 years down the road, nobody's going to remember. Nobody's going to remember. But that old saying, what you did, how you made people feel, how you related to them is what people are going to remember. And this is, to me, one of the glues in leadership. It's how we run our departments, run the area that we're responsible for, how we take care of our responsibilities in our job. It's how we help grow people, whether you're in a formal leadership position or not. How do you help your peers? How do you help those who come to you for needs, customers, internal or external? How do you make people feel? How do you try to develop yourselves? How do you try to develop other people? These are the keys that really do come to life for me when I think back to leaders that I have met over the years. I'm going to give you an example. It was a small tool and die company in Dayton, Ohio. It's a client I had a few years back. It was a small company. It maybe had 170 employees. They worked 2 shifts, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. All right. The individual that owned the company knew his people. He knew his people. He, through the course of a week, he would manage to get through and have a conversation with every single person. And he had a phenomenal gift for remembering names and what you told him. So he may come up and say, hey, how's that concert you went to? How did that go? Did you enjoy it? How was your kid's soccer game? Did they win that tournament? Man, your mom, is she feeling better? I know she had the flu or whatever the last time. He remembered those things, all right? And through a course of a week, made contact with everyone. He knew his values. He knew his vision. He articulated them. He spoke them. There were no surprises for people. So the tool and die company was kind of interesting to me. They made what I call replacement parts, knees, shoulders, and they have shelves and shelves and shelves back in the company. And they come in different sizes and things like that. Now you may need a D12 shoulder and you bring it in. It's kind of interesting. But it was Christmas Eve one night, and I don't know a lot of the background details. But there had been an accident involving a 12-year-old girl. I don't know if it had been that day or the day before, but there needed something made, immediately. All right, the holidays. It wasn't a stock part, I hate to say it like that. It was custom. He sent out a plea for anybody willing to come in and help. This was on Christmas Eve. Do you think he had problem getting anybody to come in? He had to turn people away. They came in because of the relationship he built with them. And he would do anything for them, and they were willing to do anything back for him. So, and the circumstances that it was. This is just an example of what I look at as being an authentic leader. In terms of leadership, I find lots of value in understanding what it means to be an authentic leader. There's a lot of information, research now being done on positive organizational development. That's one of the classes I teach at the university when I do organizational development. How do we do it from the positive angle? All right. So one of the books, I'm going to recommend 2 books today. One of the books is I got down here. It's called, it's written by a guy named Bill George, who's doing a lot of new research, on authentic leadership. This is pretty new. And his book, Authentic Leadership, Rediscovering the Secrets to Creating Lasting Value, is one of them. And authentic leaders demonstrate a passion for their purpose. This is another thing I've been on. How passionate are we about what we're doing at our jobs? Practice the values consistently. Practice their values consistently. We're going to be spending some time doing an activity with our values, and lead with our hearts as well as their heads. It's just not our head. It's just not the brains. It can be our heart. They establish long-term, meaningful relationships and have the self-discipline to get results. They know who they are. All right. And then he goes on to talk about we all have a spark of leadership in us, and what do we do with it? So it really does involve a degree of selflessness, and in a world of definitely morally corrupt and dysfunctional leaders, authentic leadership theory and what he has been working on has definitely become quite popular as we're really doing a search to not just find good leaders, but how do we develop and create individuals who want to do the right thing. All right. Another book that I pulled from for this has been around a little. This is the 5th edition, The Leadership Challenge. I've taught a whole class just based off this book. It's by Cruz and Posner, and they have done tons of leadership research. And every 5 years they redo it. So this book is probably hitting past that. So I would imagine they're going to be having number 6 out pretty soon. And they talk a lot about the values and consistency. So that part of it is a lot of it comes from this right here. And as I said, along with also my experience. Bill George also wrote the book, Your True North. That one's been out for a while. But if you're just looking for some good leadership books to read, those are my recommendations. Just some of the characteristics of authentic leaders. What do you consider? And looking at somebody you consider a leader, all right, a good leader, someone you want to follow, all right? What are some of their characteristics? What does a good leader do? Or say, behave? What would make you follow somebody willingly?
Principles?
Yeah, they have principles, values. We're going to talk about that, absolutely.
To me, it's like, do they have your back? Like, if you work hard for them, are they going to back you if something
Yeah.
comes up?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And understanding the situations.
Sure, absolutely. They've been there, they've been through the ropes. Even if they're a new hire into an organization, getting to know you and what you guys are doing enough to have this understanding. Absolutely. According to Kuz and Posner, every year that they have redone this, every 5 years when they redo their surveys, what do you think the number one characteristic, or the number one, we'll say characteristic, people are looking for a leader? Everything you're saying builds, everything you said builds this one thing that people look for. Trust. Absolutely. Number one. And over the past 30 years, they have done worldwide these surveys, and that has never not been the number one characteristic. And it comes from everything you guys have already said. So, a couple other things it does. I'm looking at authentic leadership. They share authentically, express authentically, unlock the power of individuality, listen authentically, unlock the power of presence, acknowledge authentically, unlock the power of appreciation, that came out here, and serve authentically, unlock the power of other-centeredness. I want you as a group just to come up with an example of how does a leader demonstrate being vulnerable? All right, what does that look like? How do they express themselves individually? How do they unlock the power of presence? What does that mean? Just throw out some ideas. You don't have to necessarily be right, wrong. There's no good or bad. Just your thoughts on this. What's the power of appreciation? What does that look like? Just one example for each of these. And what's other-centeredness look like? So if you're looking at these, the share, express, listen, acknowledge, and serve, these are all pretty fundamental, and there's things that can be learned and things that can be developed. And looking at vulnerable, I also think of the word transparent too in that. Really being transparent. I can share the good news. How do I share the bad news? This is where understanding your values, your vision, this is where articulating all this comes into practice, which we'll be talking about. But transparency is also part of this. The power of individuality, you've hit this. It's just getting to know your individual people. It's not cookie cutter. Everybody's different. And how can you communicate? How can you listen? How can you develop the relationship with those you lead? And it may look different for other ones. Unlocking the power of presence. Intentionality also is a word that hopped into my mind, because sometimes, like you said, we're so focused on our own response that we're not listening to the conversation. So sometimes we seriously have to be intentional about listening and keeping the response later. If we just would learn to communicate, and to me, when I talk about communication, the big star piece is the listening piece. Power appreciation, you've hit that too, and it's just letting people know that you appreciate them, you appreciate the job. And here's the thing, if there's books out there about appreciating your employees, it doesn't have to be the great big award, the trophy, or whatever it is. It's a simple thank you. Thank you so much. I
Very
appreciate what you did and the impact on it. This is what we want. It's the thank you. It's acknowledging somebody. So it doesn't have to be the big fancy things. And then the other centeredness, and you also hit on this, that servant leadership. I don't remember which workshop I talked about it. That was that upside down triangle, and what can I do for you? How can I help you out? So these are all principles of really authentic leaders that are helpful in the long run. Leading up to the next activity we're going to do, authentic leaders have a sense of purpose. I'm going to do this short version. They know themselves and they know where they're headed. All right? I know where I'm going. And purpose also drives passion. When I teach engagement, to, especially when it's a group that might have multiple departments or things there, I have an assessment that I use, and we talk about employee engagement. Pew does a lot of it. Pew Research does a lot of research on engagement. They're the ones that kind of jumped on the bandwagon probably about 1998, 99 and started doing this research. And back then they found that out of a workplace, you would only find about 30% of people were totally and passionate and engaged in their job. So that means 70% of your workforce is on some level, 50-some percent were kind of engaged, and then you had another percentage in there who's just flat out not feeling it. And so we talked about passion. And as I went through all these departments and how passionate and what do you need to look at, knowledge, experience, all this stuff, it comes out all the time. There really is about 70% of your workplace that is not engaged. And part of this is just due to the fact that they don't always have a sense of purpose. Maybe they're getting bored. Maybe they feel not valued in the organization. Maybe their skills aren't being utilized. And what happens is there's this lack of passion. And that really does contribute toward that lack of engagement. Authentic leaders have values, and we're going to be spending time on values. They know who they are, and they don't compromise on this. There are personal guidelines, if you want to look at it that way. All right? They direct our behavior. What we do is pretty much based on our values. They build relationships, and they have connectedness with followers. All right? Another big one. They're consistent, they're self-disciplined, they give the leader focus, determination, and the ability to focus on a goal and move forward in those goals. They show heart and compassion. All right, and this is the whole emotional intelligence piece. So what are values? What are values and where do they come from?
Our core beliefs.
Our core beliefs, absolutely. Our core beliefs. They're kind of our guiding principles, if you will. All right, where do we get them?
Parents.
Parents, absolutely.
Experiences.
Experiences, right?
Church.
Church, yeah. Yeah. Could be from the time in which we live, the decade. We talked about generational things. Our values come from the decade we grew up in. A lot of them do. So personal philosophy of mine is you need to know your values and need to be able to be transparent and vulnerable. And can you articulate what your values are to another person? Aligning action with shared values helps us lead by example. So looking at an organization here, we talk about what do you do when you're your personal best as a leader? Lots of times when I teach leadership classes, I'll ask that question rhetorically. All right, so what do you do when you're at your best as a leader? And then if asked what your leadership philosophy is, what would you say? We have values, but do we know how to articulate them to someone else? And also just understanding that my personal values may not be yours. They may not be yours. They may not be yours. We may share some. So understanding as a leader, you may have a group that works with you who don't share all your personal values, but how do we find the ones that we have in common that we all can get behind? All right? And how can we articulate those and creating a community with them? Because if we align our actions with our shared values, it helps us lead by example. And clarity around, these are just notes I wrote to remember them. Clarity around personal values, this is what they found in the research, Kuz and Posner, was more significant, listen to this, was more significant for accounting for positive workplace attitudes and level of engagements than any kind of clarity about organizational values. So bottom line is as my leader, I want to know what your personal values are. I want you to be able to tell them to me. I want to find our shared values and head out on a direction more than I care really about your whole organization's values, for me personally. And it really did help increase engagement. So leadership is not just about our own values, but it's the values of those you're leading to or working with too. All right? So we're going to talk a little bit about some of our shared values, and we're going to do a little exercise. If you can walk out of here today and say, I can only keep one value in my life of what I've of what you've sorted out, what's that value going to be? All right, so this is what I want you to do now. You can write them in your book down there, but I want you to build a pyramid with your cards. And you're going to flip them over now so the colored side shows. Your top value will go up here, your second and third, and then however the other 12 will just be just down through here. Okay, so you can keep these 15 values, but I want you to identify your top one and your second and your third. And so you have on your paper, it gives you a quick and dirty description of what each color means, and it tells you what of the value cards fall under that. So keep them out, keep them, build your pyramid, keep them out, because we're going to talk about it. Some of you may have a rainbow color, some may be have more in some areas, some may be missing colors completely. Then we're going to practice sharing our values. Not all of them, we don't have that kind of time. But I'm going to have you go through and identify what your number one value is and why. This is why. Why is it your value? Why did it come out on top? Talk to us about it. If as a leader, your employees knowing what your values are and why makes such a huge impact. And it's hard for us to do, the talking about it. We're just going to practice a little bit. I also want to throw in here too that you're going to have some values that are never going to change throughout your life. Others may change as you grow, as you go through different life stages. All right, so there can be some change there also. You all have a different top value. All right. In an organization, you look at your top value. You've all done a great job of articulating why it's your top value. So in understanding whether it's your peers working with you, those who are leading may have some different top values. And so how do we understand and appreciate and support values that may be different from us? And by sharing your values, I'm going to use Tom as an example because the integrity that the either or kind of black and white works to simplify, but it takes some emotion out. So by you sharing what that is, well, I understand it. It's not me personally. Yeah. This is how Tom is, you know. It's huge. It's huge. I'm going to give you a few examples just from my career. We had bite-sized trainings, and they were getting to know each other quite well. And there was a woman in the group, you know, maybe the mom of the group, you know, she was warm and fuzzy and huggy, and she was a little bit older, and, you know, oh yeah, she'd bring the cookies for break, that type of person. And they were doing this, and then she raised her head. She goes, Cindy, I think mine are wrong. And I'm thinking, well, you know, they're your values. Yours could be wrong. But I went over there and I looked, and I expected her to be spattered all pink and purple. I mean, really. And there wasn't much of it. And she was really high on, there was some red, there was lots of orange. What's all this orange doing there? Mastery, competence, achievement, recognition, ambition, winning, excellence, growth, power. And then the tears came. And she had been married for 30-some years, and she had just gotten divorced. All right. And at her age, she seriously, we sat and we talked about it, and she goes, I'm getting this now. I guess I'm trying to find out who I am. I'm kind of reinventing myself. So we talked about life stages, okay? And she wants to win, and she wants some kind of recognition, and, you know, and wants to feel like there's growth and there's achievement. And she said, she goes, I'll get back to who I think I am. But right now, it was kind of this is where I am right now. And in some weird way, this was helpful for her. And it was helpful in terms of her leadership. You know, have you changed? Have your employees noticed anything different? You know, how transparent are you being in different things? So there's another example, how just thinking through what your top values are, and they can change at different times. Last example I'm going to give you is a company I was doing training in, and it is a company that is always done great. Turn that sessions. They always seemed to manage to hang in there. And there was a supervisor who I would say was in her mid-30s, and there was an employee I would say was probably in her mid-30s. They were about the same age. And in the values exercise, the supervisor had tons of orange. All right, lots of orange. Oh, what else did she have in here? She may have had some greens. Yeah. No, she didn't really have any greens. Maybe some red, a lot of orange. And it's a company that believed that you promote from within. You know, you do a good job and they're going to promote you. You are going to get rewarded for that. And she was on the fast track. Did not have any kids. She was single. Lots of time and energy. The employee, great employee. All right, excellent job. There was nothing to complain about her. She had 2 kids, okay? And you know how it is when you've got kids, one plays soccer on this side of town, the other one plays soccer on this side of town. And she would work for, I think, 8:30 to 5, whatever it was the hours were. And she would leave promptly at 5. The supervisor didn't. And there was kind of this unspoken norm floating through here that people who wanted to do a good job just didn't leave when it was time to go. So there was definitely some misperceptions between the two. All right. So once we could do this and we laid it out, the employee came up to me and said, I've looked at my supervisors and I look at mine, and family I think was her top, and the supervisor had, other, what was it? I should even remember. Achievement, definite mastery, all those were on her. So I said, would you ever talk to her? And she said, would you sit with us? So we did. I mean, a time with the company, we got the 2 of them together. And just talking about it was a huge eye-opener. It just really was. And it helped them understand each other better. Did it make it 100% perfect? No. It will never be a 100% perfect relationship. But what it did is explaining and articulating my personal values opened up this window of understanding between the two. So this is why I find the value and the importance of, first of all, there's lots of values out there. I had you work with what was in that stack of cards. I get that, okay? However, just picking out from here and be able to explain why. So if you're going with, from what I have seen from my personal experience and also the research done by Kuz and Posner in the Leadership Challenge, for a leader to be able to write down, articulate, explore their personal values, and to be able to share them, and then to be able to try to find shared values within the team, the opportunity for growth, opportunity for a well-performing team, growing individuals, growing employees, is a lot higher than one who just can't. And then if I don't understand you and we don't have a conversation, I'm going to fill in the blanks with my own perceptions. I'm just going to do it. So values in action. I always like to create action statements. It's something you can go back to, but what's a value maybe that you picked or a value of yours? Define it. What does it look like in action? How do you live that value? If integrity is your top value, how do you live it? How do I see it behaviorally? And if you want to improve it or if you want to learn to share it more, what actions will you take? That's what this action statement was for. All right? All right. Last thing I want to go over is there's something called, we've talked about sharing our values, and we've talked about the value of being able to do that, because that's what guides our actions and that's what guides our behavior. There's something called the Jabari Window. It's a model for receiving feedback and understanding the appropriate value of self-disclosure. This is what we're doing in terms of sharing our values and how to become a more effective leader, a team member, or a more effective individual. What I want you to do, first of all, is we do have an assessment, and what you're going to do with it is this. So there's 12 statements or 10 statements. It's an assessment. And ask a question, and you have 2 choices, A or B. Each one is worth 5 points. So you're going to look at answer A and answer B. If answer A is completely characteristic of what you would do, then you are going to divide the points. You'll put a 5 by the A and 0 by the B. Let's say,
Oh, it could be half.
yes, you can split them. Or maybe most of the time I would. So maybe A gets a 4 and B gets a 1. All right. So you're just going to go through these statements and divide up your points. All can go toward one thing, or you can split them. All right. But this is kind of,
So 5 points per question.
yes, exactly. All right.
And this is like how right now you deal with things. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, kind of right now. This snapshot in time of where you are right now. The Jabari Window is a model created by 2 individuals, and what it does is it measures your receptivity to feedback and your willingness to self-disclose. It's receptivity to feedback. So you look at what your score was, and it's across the horizontal. Mine was 18. This is mine. And then willingness to self-disclose goes on the vertical axis, okay? So you're going to have a box. Your box probably won't look like mine, hopefully. Mine has taken some work. And it might not look like who you're sitting by, and that's fine. Again, this is your individual thing. All right, so what this means is this. Receptivity to feedback. There's 4 squares. First one's what we call our open square. Okay, as you can see, mine is huge. All right, mine is huge. I'm an extrovert, so your personality style could also impact that. I think from doing this for years, I've learned how to grow it when necessary. What it basically means is, this is information that I know and you know too. You can know some things about me, like I'm short or I have blonde hair, whatever, because you just look at me, all right? Other things you know about me because I have gladly shared, all right? It can be information that you're driving down 675 and there might be a big old billboard sign about this, and you're going, oh yeah, that's cool. You don't care who knows it. You know, it's fine with you. It's comfortable, all right? The larger your open window is, the more receptive you are to feedback and the more willing you are to self-disclose with other people. So if we're talking about sharing our personal values and being transparent and all the things we talked about this morning, having a larger open area may be easier for you. Doesn't mean you can't learn it, doesn't mean you can't grow it. For me, who has a large area, I have had to learn the art of appropriate self-disclosure. Not everybody wants to know everything about me. Not everything in terms of a leader is appropriate to share. So the open area, some of it is free information. That's what you can see about me. The other's information I'm willing to share. A person with a larger open area self-disclose more comfortably. Doesn't mean you won't be, but sometimes maybe that pit of that stomach goes, oh, do I want to share this information or not about themselves with you? Appropriate self-disclosure between individuals allows trust to grow in a relationship. You got to feel like you know someone. Your employees got to feel like they know you for that relationship and the closeness to develop. So now we got the blind area. Yeah, no clue. You don't know, but everybody else does. I kind of call it the broccoli in your teeth. You know, sometimes you might be walking around and be a whole hunk of broccoli stuck in your teeth after lunch, and you always need that person who's going to say, hey, Cindy, you got broccoli in your teeth, you know? Because I didn't know it. So in looking at the blind area, it contains information that you do not know about yourself, but your team members or your employees are real aware of, your family, whatever. It can be habits, it can be behaviors, or it can even be strengths you don't see about yourself. All right? Definitely could be strengths you don't see about yourself. It's not always a negative thing. Maybe you have a habit of interrupting or taking over conversations and do not see that about yourself. So when somebody gives you the feedback and they're saying, how is somebody going to give you feedback on that? Because you're going to ask for it. You're going to ask for feedback about yourself. Possibly the strength of keeping a team on track. The black and white, let's make it easy. This is a strength I have, but sometimes maybe a person doesn't always jump in and use it. Feedback from others allows you to become aware of your positive and negative traits and helps others see them and can help you overcome some of the issues that directly affect your team, your group, your family, whoever you're leading. This makes sense. And we do it by asking questions. Quick example, I'm learning this online stuff. In the summer, I had to do it all online, and it was a little rough at places. This fall semester, part of what they do as a high performance team is they're in a team and they have got to 4 times during the semester sit here. I have an outline. They have got to give face-to-face feedback, the good, the bad, the potential, the ugly, whatever, and become comfortable doing it. As a leader, I do not ask them to do things I'm not willing to do myself. So 2 weeks ago, they did it for me. Put them in their groups for half an hour. This was on Zoom that day, and come back, and you're going to tell me the good, bad, the ugly. And I did. And some of it I already realized about myself. Others were nice suggestions, nice things. And others were things that, you know what, great point. I'm learning this too. I haven't seen this. And it's super helpful, but you got to be willing to ask for feedback. The third one, sometimes I call that skeletons in the closet. It's you know the information. I mean, no way are you sharing it with anybody else. I co-taught a class, an advanced interpersonal communication class years ago. And the person that I co-taught with, she was Miss Interpersonal. Everybody loved her. I was in the department. I could hardly get an appointment to see her. Students all the time. I mean, she was just so caring but honest, direct, great feedback, but Miss Empathy, Miss Interpersonal. And when she retired, she moved to North Carolina. And it was kind of interesting. When she passed away, I watched, they linked her funeral service. I'm going, these same people who I didn't know were saying the exact same things about this person. You know, it was her. But I would realize we would do class, and then we would try to go out to eat afterwards just to catch up. Or we'd have lunch. After she moved away, she'd come back up and we'd have lunch. I got to realizing that, you know, I'm doing all the talking. And she is not saying a word. And she is the one who's answering the question. So I used to think, oh, somebody who has a large hidden area, could you just be quiet? Oh, no. She was not a quiet person. She was a master of asking questions. So I would do all the talking. She wasn't sharing. And I would walk away saying, no, I really haven't learned anything new. So we changed it. She had to go first when we talked. So not knowing things, having this large hidden area, you may not want others to know, and not everything needs to be shared. I understand that. But this is information you may not be comfortable sharing, but it can keep us from showing our authentic selves if we're not willing to self-disclose. Self-disclosure is kind of mutual self-disclosure is what builds trust in relationships. Maybe consider an interviewer if you don't share a lot. That's what my friend was. Asking for feedback is one way of practicing self-disclosure, and it will help shrink that hidden area, and it can open up the open area, the free area. All right? The last one I like, it's called the unknown area. This is things you don't know about yourself. I don't know. It can be things, skills or talents you haven't discovered yet. Yeah, I just love it when my college kids or younger adults, there's a whole world in front of you with things you haven't discovered about yourself yet, really, you know, and it's there. All total amount of personal growth hasn't been acquired yet, and I think in a lifetime, I hope we always are searching for our personal growth. We're never totally actualized. We're always learning and growing. It can be repressed or subconscious feelings you haven't addressed. It could be the issue you have with one of your employees, one of your coworkers, a family member, something you just haven't sat down and had the conversation yet. But mostly I look at it in terms of things we just haven't learned or know or discovered. All right? And if you haven't learned, know, or discovered everything about yourself, then understand your family hasn't, your employees haven't, your coworkers haven't, your peers haven't. Take a minute to talk about yours. Do you agree with it? Are you happy with the size of it? Do you wish to change it? If you say, okay, I want to change one area to the next, get feedback from your team members on how you can do that. All right? So, conversation. And the awareness allows you, in terms of leadership, which is I'm tying it into, how we are interacting or communicating with those around us. And sometimes if there is an issue, by asking for feedback and being receptive to it. All right, not everybody's going to come up and give you feedback, but if you ask for it, I look at feedback as a gift I mean, it really is. Even if it's not always comfortable, it has allowed to put me on a path to self-growth. However, in our discussing leadership, we've talked a lot about being authentic and building the relationships and being considerate and emotional intelligence, all this stuff. It doesn't negate the fact that there still has to be boundaries. There has to be boundaries in leadership. One person's in charge, and you may put the group together and try to come up with a mutual decision, but the buck still has to stop with somebody, and you're responsible. All right, go forth and be authentic, you guys. Just do it.